Hier's ons weer, dis 'n Bosberaad, ons praat die waarheid, ek sweer. Geen politiek span in die wêreld se pyn. My woorde sny skerp, my feite getrein. Nuwe gaste elke week, saam op die stoep. Debatte word gevoer, met passie en moed. Van oos na die wes, boosheid tot skwaai. Bosberaad saam ons, terwyl jy braai. Nuwe gaste elke week, saam op die stoep. Debatte word gevoer, met passie en moed. Van oos na die wes, boosheid tot skwaai. Bosberaad saam ons, terwyl jy braai. Dis 'n Bosberaad, waar al die manne saam kan praat. Rondom die vuur, ons stemme kwaad. Bosberaad is 'n volkssaak. Die wêreld draai woes, die spanning klim hoog. Magte botsvel, die vrede raak droog. Wynand bly sterk, hy lei die gesprek. Met feite en krag hou hy alles in check. Van Rusland tot China, die stryd word gevoer. Midde-Ooste se vure, als in sy moer. Ons breek dit af, hier's geen plek vir twyfel. In die Bosberaad kan ons saam praat. Dis 'n Bosberaad, waar al die manne saam kan praat. Rondom die vuur, ons stemme kwaad. Bosberaad is 'n volkssaak. Geen meer, geen grense, ons stemme bly vry. Die wêreld se smart, ons voel dit sny. Wynand en sy span, die lig skyn so klaar. In die Bosberaad is die waarheid ons daar. Die Bosberaad, dis 'n Bosberaad, Geen mure, geen grense, ons stemme bly vry. Die wêreld se smart, ons voel dit sny. Wynand en sy span, die lig skyn so klaar. In die Bosberaad is die waarheid mos daar. Dis 'n Bosberaad, waar al die manne saam kan praat. Rondom die vuur, ons stemme kwaad. Bosberaad is 'n volkssaak. Kom kyk na die show, die waarheid word gesê. Hier is dit nou, dis wat jy wil hê. Bosberaad, ons staan altyd sterk. Vir vrede en waarheid is ons grootste werk.
Goeienaand en welkom by ons Bosberaad. Or let me rather say welcome at this Indaba that we have tonight. And a very, very special night. Of course, there's a lot of visitors already. We are almost over 500, which is listening at the moment. And in the next moment or so, I will introduce to you once again Colonel Chris Wyatt from the United States of America. And of course, Rob McGimpsey here from SBMB, currently in Uppington. But let me see if you can hear me, all the things that is important. Yeah, there the message is everybody can hear me, they can see me, and the numbers are climbing as people are coming on board. And I will introduce our guest tonight. Let me very first bring Rob on stage. Yes, Rob.
Good evening, Wynand, and good evening to all the viewers. It's nice to be here tonight and to discuss issues in the country. Thank you.
And then Chris, welcome back to the channel.
Baie dankie.
Yeah, I think the people are quite excited. I have received a huge response when they hear that you are coming on, especially if we look at all the things that has happened as towards the year end. We have started in February with a big announcement from Trump. We are now in November, so it's just the first and the last month, which is still quiet or was quiet, but things has been happening. But just greet the people and then I will introduce a little bit more.
Absolutely. Greetings, everyone. Welcome, Wynand. I hope you're doing well in South Africa, South Africa. Wynand, mag ik say, ek is afgunstig. That Bosberaad song, I want my Afrikaans theme song. Give me your musician. I want a song like that.
Chris, that can be arranged. This is interesting. The AI generated song done by a nephew of mine, and I'll speak to him, and maybe he can make you a special one.
Well, I do lots of those AI songs. I mean, I've got my own YouTube distribution and artist thing now. It's DJ Silver Eagle for the Colonel's Eagles, yeah, I've got about 150 songs. But no, my Afrikaans ones are okay. They're not great, so that's just brilliant. That Bosberaad opening is fantastic, and you don't have to worry about any copyright claims. So it's a wonderful theme song. So I want something similar. So maybe you can help me out there. So anyway, thank you very much.
I think you will. Good. With what I've said earlier, Rob,
Evening, Chris.
what has been happening, I want to show you just 4 slides, which we can use as an introduction for the discussions tonight. The first one is fairly self-explanatory. This is fine while the house are burning down. Typical of where we are in South Africa. Then the next one is what the United States of Donald Trump this morning announced, or last night, where he said that the reasons he gave why they did not attend the summit. But I think the important thing on this is the fact where he say, therefore, at my direction, South Africa will not be receiving an invitation to 2026 G20, which will be hosted in the great city of Miami, Florida. I wish he will invite me. I've never been there. And then immediately after this came out, the next happened. Ramaphosa rallies against Trump's tantrum. But look at the negative of ENCA, how they put Ramaphosa, and in the media, he's now portrayed as this strong man who stand up to Donald Trump. The last thing I want to show before I'm going to give you a chat is Nomvula chose Leila Khaled over the US Embassy. ANC chose Iran over US trade benefits. Naledi Pandor chose the ICJ case over US bilateralism. Lamola chose China over Taiwan embassy. ANC chose Palestine over South Africa. The US did not bully South Africa. The ANC simply made bad decisions. Now, I watched that movie that you sent me this morning, that short. And in that short, you say a very important thing. You said that Trump got access to at least 8 different intelligence organizations that is feeding him intelligence, and that includes intelligence from every country in the world, and of course, South Africa. I think because of all the problems in South Africa, he will receive more and more feedback on that. And then you said something important. You said, what does Trump know that we don't know? Let's start from there.
All right. Well, Wynand, hey, Rob, belated greetings to you as well, my friend. So, it's that's the point I made. Look, I made that short last night. I was at a veterans organization. We had a big fundraiser yesterday, which went very well, by the way. Raised a lot of funds that are necessary because we got a lot of bills there. But anyway, that went very well. Went till midnight last night. So in the midst of that, yesterday afternoon, after one of my South Africans tipped me off to Trump's Truth Social post, I looked at it, I read it, I did a short analyzing it and said what it means. And then I said, you know what? It's time just to put this out there, to float this balloon. Trump has access to 19 intelligence agencies at the national level. At the national level, that doesn't even include information that comes, as you said, from friends, partners, and allies. People share information. And so, of course, I'm talking about the National Security Agency, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the Department of Energy, the FBI, the Military Services Intelligence. The list goes on and on. And this is the most complex intelligence system in the world. Of course, I spent 30 years as an intelligence officer in that system and have worked with all these agencies. And so I'm very familiar with how they work. That doesn't mean they're perfect. I mean, someone tried to sharpshoot me saying, oh, well, you know, they didn't get 9/11 and they didn't get this and the other. Yeah, it's funny how the people that know nothing about intelligence always talk about the so-called intelligence failures, which frankly, more often than not, Wynand, are not intelligence failures, but failures by leaders to address the issues like 9/11. For instance, we were aware as a U.S. Army counterintelligence, we were aware of some of these people from Saudi Arabia that are going over there who had terror-related links, and we were prohibited under threat of prosecution from sharing that information with the FBI. So the FBI couldn't find that information out from us. They could only have found out on their own research if they did something in America, which they weren't going to do. They laid low when they got to America. So, you know, not that would have stopped 9/11, but certainly it would have alerted people. So the point here is that Trump has access to the best information. Well, whether he uses it or not is a different story. And I don't know that he does have that information. But in addition to that, we also have to remember that let's start with the 59ers. The 59ers, the first 59 refugees that came over. Now, there's a little Sunnyside prowler who's running on making videos now about one of the refugees that I interviewed, the first one, Thea von Straten, making these allegations against her. But folks have to understand that short of a military security clearance that like I have, that's a very thorough background, includes polygraphs and investigations that go back your entire life. You bounce a check, you shoplifted, you're going to be in trouble. Short of that, the most stringent vetting we do is for refugees. And in the case of the 59ers, because this program was announced, there's a lot of scrutiny. Those people went through as many as 6 interviews by U.S. officials and intense investigation into background. And if people think that the U.S. investigators didn't have somebody that went to the locations where people came from and asked questions about them, then they're just fools. So those people also, they weren't providing intelligence by simply being interviewed and relating their experiences about what's happening in South Africa. That information, that what I would call combat information, that's, on the battlefield, combat information comes in. The intelligence officer takes that information and synthesizes it into an intelligence report. That's also information available to President Trump, as well as the thousands and thousands, I'm telling you guys, thousands who've been interviewed since then, investigations ongoing. So there's a wealth of information. And whether Trump is reacting to that information or he's just reacting off the cuff really doesn't matter now, because the South African government has insulted the United States with its ambassador as a racist coming to America, calling America racist, and Trump the leader of global white supremacy. And now a senior leader goes on CNN, the foreign minister, on misinformation, white genocide, a project I was involved in, but they lied to me and told me it was something else, and they cut me out of it, which is fine. I don't want to be part of it. But that documented by Donny O'Sullivan on CNN, Ronnie Lamola calls Donald Trump white supremacist as the G20 is getting underway. Look, and I got a whole other list of insults, but the bottom line is he has access to the best. Whether he's using it, I can't say, but I suspect he is.
Yeah, I don't think that South Africa is going to have a very nice 2026 as far as the United States is concerned. And, there's a lot that one can say about Donald Trump. He threatens, he do a lot of things, he acts, he brings stuff in, but in the end, he produces results. And the results is not what he is threatening with. The results is real results to get done what needs to be done. Now, if we go back to the importance of the sea route around the southern tip of Africa, which is of course very important. The reasons, discussions here in South Africa of Chinese involvement with the upgrade of Simonstown, the upgrade of the Brug facilities, etc. We can expect that the focus will increase on South Africa in the coming time which lies ahead. And Rob, I just want to mention, please come in whenever you want to ask Chris a question or comment on what he's saying. Okay.
Right.
I think there's a lot of stuff that can happen. And South Africa must be very careful. I read last or earlier tonight, of the United States Special Forces infiltration in Puntland in Somalia for the first time ever into the mountains where their hideouts are. And I think they got about 100 Special Forces operators that is in there, which shows me that he's willing to do whatever is needed to get Somalia and the Houthis and those guys and everybody else who is involved with the passing of the ships to get them under control. Why wouldn't he do the same in South Africa?
Well,
he's doing it with Venezuela.
Well, yeah, it's certainly authorized for Venezuela. That's interesting. You know, you raise a good point here that I don't think people are really talking about it. Maybe the ANC needs to pay attention to what's going on here in Somalia and in Venezuela. But interesting, Wynand, that you mentioned in Somalia, because it's reported 100 special operators. And of course, you and I both know, you haven't been special forces, that special forces don't operate in groups of 100 normally. We talk about an A team, just a few guys, a dozen, 18 at max. So if it's 100, there's either multiple A teams in there, or it's the Rangers that have gone in, which are also considered special forces here in the U.S. And the media doesn't know the distinction. So I don't know who's responsible is going in. But this, to me, we have never, to my knowledge, ever done an operation in Puntland or in Somaliland. We've only done it in Somalia proper. So this is a major situation that this is, even the fact that people know about is shocking. And maybe one reason people know about it is that Trump wants to send a message to, you know, malignant actors like Venezuela and, I don't know, maybe the ANC.
Right on, Chris, if I can come in, I want to discuss the G20 summit. And let's look at the aim of this G20
Rob,
summit.
I got to stop you right there, brother. You mean the G14?
The G14. But if you look at what happened over the past weekend, you'll see that the politicians are up at the top, and there's a big gap between the politicians and the people. And that gap is a Ponzi scheme, if I may use the word, the Ponzi scheme, because nothing actually happens. If you look at the role of the G20 and what actually happens on the ground, it doesn't exist. So it's a mess. It's a stage. The G20 is a stage where they will promote to their people why they need to pay taxes and why this thing needs to take place. But the people don't benefit. A typical example is the Prime Minister, the Italian Prime Minister, wants to give billions of dollars into health and education. But we see what's happening in South Africa. All the focus points for the G20 that was tabled don't reflect in South Africa at all. So why they're there? It's a total mess, and it's totally misleading as well. And of course, you come to the United Nations, they've got a role, the G20's got a role, and there's enemies on the stage. They all come together and they want to promote peace and stability and eliminate poverty, but South Africa is full of it. So who are they fooling? They're trying to sell a stage where they can just generate more money. And as you quite rightly said, Chris, it's a beggar's bowl. It's just a nice red carpet process to ask for money, right or wrong.
No, I agree with 100%. The problem is that, again, it's like the United Nations General Assembly. You can't get consensus. And like the African Union, you can't take action unless you can get consensus. So you really can't accomplish anything. The G20 is a joke. I've said so since its formation. The G7 is large enough. That's as far as you really can go with something like that. Beyond that, gets ridiculous. It's like the BRICS inviting all these other countries to join BRICS. It just becomes unmanageable and unwieldy. And the thing with this, you're right. It's just for virtue signaling. It's empty virtue signaling, because what they've agreed to there, virtually none of that will be done. You know, it's the United States that has done things to end poverty in Africa, and it done things. You know, the Chinese who participate in this famously just published, we are going to give South Africa money to fight HIV, $3.59 or $3.49 million over 2 years. That's $1.75 million per year. We gave South Africa over $350 million per year to fight HIV, a total of $8.1 billion over the course of 22 years. And when it comes to development, it's the same sort of thing. You know, it's look, everyone is in it for something. The U.S. has objectives. We do these things for a reason, but they're certainly a lot more benign than what the Chinese are doing, what others doing. And the Europeans don't do anything. They make all these empty promises. There's no way. They're talking debt relief. Who did debt relief? Well, the The heavily indebted poor countries initiative, HIPC, was a U.S. formulated program. We're the ones that forgave the debt for Mozambique, for Ghana, for a host of other countries. And then we had enhanced HIPC because we did another round. And we wiped out tens of billions of dollars of debt for African countries just for them to come back to the bowl and beg again. And now they want debt relief again. This is ridiculous. And, the Europeans didn't do it. And by the way, that debt is not debt loaned from government to government. We're talking about from private banks. So Citibank loaned, $1 billion to X country. They write that debt off, and then we, the consumer in America, pay higher banking fees and higher interest rates to pay off the debt from Africans. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. So yeah, you're right about that. It's empty virtue signaling. That's all this conference is. And let me just finish with this comment. A lot of people it was a successful summit. Look how well they managed it. Did anybody in their right mind think that the ANC couldn't cobble together enough police to protect the diplomats and paint the streets, so it looks nice, and give them a dog and pony show, a Potemkin village? Of course they're going to be able to do that. I mean, I can do that in Malawi. Malawi can pull that off. Give me a break. But when they left, you still have 45% unemployment. You still have the worst performing ports of the world, ranked 78th. You still have people selling rocks painted as coal to burn in coal-fired power plants. You still have load shedding. You still have 27,000 murders. You still have collapsing infrastructure. You still have political paralysis. Nothing has changed. And you wasted R1 billion on this. So look, it was going to be a success from a standpoint. It was a dog and pony show. It was never going to be a failure from that standpoint. The media are just so corrupt, and that's part of the problem. People believe what they hear in the media. It's crazy.
Look, what I picked up with the media is the government of national unity wasn't reflected on the receiving of all the dignitaries from the various countries. It was typically the ruling party's party or their show. What do you think about that?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And this goes back to the formation of the GNU. When the GNU was formed, it was a bilateral agreement between the Democratic Alliance and the African National Congress. And that was it. They agreed to form a coalition, and they made the ground rules. And then the ANC went behind their back and invited 8 other parties to join, thereby weakening the DDA's position and getting people in line with them, like Gabe McKenzie and others coming into it. And so it strengthened the ANC, and they act as if they have a majority government when they have simply a plurality government, 40% of the popular vote. And what that wasn't much. So the problem is that, as I said from the beginning, you can see how weak and inexperienced the Democratic Alliance was when it comes to negotiating, because they didn't get any of the ministries that matter: police, military, intelligence, commerce, trade, the foreign ministry, and justice. None of those 6 ministries, the most important ones to run the government and the country, are in their control. So they have no say in foreign policy. And the ANC's made it clear, this isn't for the DA. This isn't for the Freedom Front Plus. This isn't for IFP. We run foreign policy. And that's why it was reflected that way. But your point is a broader point, that if it was a true government of national unity, there would have been Steenhuisen or, Dion George before he got sacked, or Peter Groenewald out there on the tarmac. But there weren't, because the ANC is arrogant. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. Correct. Now, looking at the political leaders that attended, you see they've got all these goals and objectives and missions in the statement to fix the world and eliminate poverty, etc. But are the politicians, if I may use the word, educated to fix the global problems? Because they're all talkers. If you look at the various countries, it's a mess. So, like if one had to be an architect or an engineer, you've got to go through a course, you've got to go to university. What do these politicians go through to qualify as politicians to fix the global problem? They're not skilled. They're all talkers. So you have a mess.
By and large, I'd say that's pretty true. But, this is why there's a fair argument that people should only go into politics after they've been successful in the private sector. Once they've been successful in the private sector, then they should consider politics. But most of these politicians enter politics early in life, and they're there forever. That becomes their life, and they have no success in the private sector. They don't know how to sign a payroll check. They don't know how to make a business a going concern. They don't know how to make a profit. They don't know how to interact. And so they kid themselves, and they think that they're smarter than they really are. And that's what's so hilarious about all this stuff. All these politicians, not so much the leaders of G20, but politicians around the world, insulting and mocking, like Ramaphosa mocking President Trump. Really? Seriously? I mean, go back to McDonald's, buddy. You were handed $300 million of wealth, and after 30 years, it's $350 million of wealth. You give me $300 million of wealth in 1991, 1994, and I'm a multi-billionaire by today. We could just put it in the bank and earn interest on it and make more money than Ramaphosa has done. It's not very impressive. So, yeah, your point's very valid. I mean, what makes them qualified? What makes them the right people to do this? Well, in South Africa's case, it's even worse. At least in Europe and America, we pick the idiots that sit in office. You don't even get to pick the idiots. You vote for a party, and the party picks the idiots, and then they get rid of them if they don't like what they have to say, which defrauds the voter. I mean, for instance, if somebody wanted Ronaldo Ghost to be a member of parliament, and if they got to vote for him, then he would be. And if they didn't want him, they wouldn't get it. But Ronaldo Ghost, a lot of people were happy that he went to parliament. But the cowardly Democratic Alliance then dumped him on his ear after their own investigation determined that he should stay in the party and, just get a warning about what he did 14 years ago. But they're cowardly. So in South Africa, you don't even vote for the people that are in office. That makes it even worse. And so you get the 30% crowd. That's who you've got. Many of these people, they can't walk and chew gum simultaneously. They'll trip.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, you see, I see the EU or the African Union removing all forms of Western and European influence in the one hand. On the other hand, they're asking to invest and bring money. So it's contradictory at its best.
Yeah, but that's been going on for decades, but it's really picking up steam after COVID. It's been going for a long time. So South Africa's ANC, Wynand gave a very good list there of things that South Africa has done that are contrary to our interest. But the list goes back much earlier than that. And I talk about this frequently. If you want to take the point when this relationship began to go sour, it was around 2000 when the Rome Statute was negotiated for the International Criminal Court. And the United States, because protections that, by the way, the United States lawyers are the ones that wrote the Rome Statute for the ICC. It wasn't The Hague. It was American lawyers. And so they wrote that. But when the protections were removed, protect U.S. service members, and we deploy over the world, the U.S. wanted no part of that. The Senate wouldn't ratify that. So we didn't join it. Because we didn't join it, there is a procedure in there called an Article 98 waiver in the Rome Statute that allows for a country to make a promise not to extradite people. Okay. So if they're not, so South Africa's government refused to sign Article 98 waiver 25 years ago. And as a consequence, we could no longer provide, training for South Africans to come to the U.S. It was suspended under the Bush administration for a couple of years. We couldn't participate in exercise with South African forces. We couldn't let them come to the War College or go to the Command and Staff College or Marine schools. That was all suspended because they would not agree to protect our soldiers. And so that's where it really started. And it's continued. And it's reached a crescendo in 2023, 2024, 2025. But this is a long time in coming. And these idiots keep talking about Trump, and they'll outlast Trump. It doesn't matter. So Kasatu came to the States. Kasatu to talk to come. No, they came to the States. They came to the States to talk to the Democrats. They usually get a very friendly ear with Democrats, and especially from the Congressional Black Caucus. It was the Congressional Black Caucus last year that told Kasatu, you all need to stop this. This is insane. The U.S. is not going to continue to support this. AGOA is going to disappear. We're going to stop giving money to South Africa. The Democrats, the black Democrats told them that. And of course, Kasatu is not the government. They're just part of the evil alliance. So, the South African government's not listening.
Good. Yeah, I think that's a very important point that you are making there. There's only 4 issues that must be resolved. One is BEE for American companies. One is they must declare farm murders a priority. The one is no the land story, no taking of the land without compensation. And the fourth one was, which is very important. Help me. Rob, didn't you learn something? But the fourth one, if they just do that 4 points, if they agree and they change that, everything else will fall away. And probably change their attitude towards the international relations and foreign relationships, which they are not willing to do. I get the impression, because Mugabe did the same thing, they reach a point where they cannot keep the masses happy anymore. They've stolen too much, taken too much. They are threatening everybody with money. You know the story of Elon Musk for Starlink. Give us 30% of your company. He refused that. And then they said, okay, donate $100 million to the ANC election campaign. Then you can bring Starlink in. It's all about money, but nothing for the people.
Mhm.
That's the problem.
Do
People
you
don't get
think-
anything. The people stay poor.
Yeah, but do you think that the South African government, with the fact that they continue with the confiscation of the land without compensation, that word is now evading me.
Expropriation.
Huh?
Expropriation.
Expropriation
Yes.
without compensation.
Nice word. Nice word for an English-speaking person. Expropriation without compensation. That's the great word. But I wanted to say now here is that they refuse to abide by the few requests, the four main requests that the United States put in front of them. Do you think they continue because they are afraid of the masses in South Africa that they will be deposed? Do you think there's something like that?
Well, it's a very good question, Wynand, and let me address it this way. Of course, I think you know that I knew Neil de Beer, which is a person popular with a lot of folks who view your program. But I met with Neil de Beer as he was in very poor health just a few months ago in April in South Africa in Gordons Bay. We met at the hotel there and had coffee. He was a bit emaciated, but he was in good spirits. But the end was coming. He was dying from cancer. And I asked Neil, I said, listen, this is April. I said, I'm following what's going on, and I'm trying to analyze this as an intelligence analyst, what the ANC is up to, because they continually poke the bear. They keep, whoop, 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 poking the bear, America, insulting America. And this is after Ibrahim Rasool and all this other stuff. And I said, I don't get it. I mean, did they want to play the martyr? Are they trying to be the victim here? Do they think they're going to get support from Beijing or Moscow or Tehran if they do this? Because it doesn't make sense otherwise. Or are they just that stupid? Or I think I said that dumb. And Neil leaned over to me in his Afrikaans accent, which I can't do. Ronaldo does a good imitation of me. He says, Chris, I know these people. I was with them for years. I have to tell you, they're just that stupid. I mean, I think that there's a lot of truth in that statement, because it doesn't make any sense. First off, if you want to keep the masses happy and be able to give them SASA grants and stuff like that, you have to have an economy that generates revenue and a tax base. They're chasing the tax base away. Never mind the refugee program. 82 South Africans abandon the country every single day. That's a sucking chest wound. And then they take their wealth with them. We're not talking about people that are leaving Khayelitsha and Manenberg and Alexander. We're talking about people leaving Sandton and people leaving Constantia and places like that. And they're going abroad and taking their resource with them. And yes, they can find ways to get around SARS. It's not good. And if you want to succeed, the smart money is to develop trade. But the points you make there, Wynand, are very important because they're not particularly hard things to deal with. The only real stickler for them would be the EWC, but there's a way out of that too. A very easy way out of that. But I mean, they're like, well, we're not going to give American companies exemption. Then why do you have industrial parks exclusively for the use of Chinese Communist Party companies? Why do you do that? Why does that exist in South Africa? You give the Chinese that kind of access, but you're going to say, we won't give the Americans an exemption from BE. Just give them the exemption. It's stupid. And you can make the argument, hey, look, it's going to generate all these jobs. So what? So you don't give money to your patronage puppies. You've got enough patronage puppies. You don't need more. So that's easy. Then the second one there is the situation with the EWC. All they have to do is quietly elevate it to the Constitutional Court and tell the judges to declare it unconstitutional. And then they get off the hook. It's simple because it is unconstitutional. It violates Act 25 of the Section 25 of the Constitution. It's clearly unconstitutional. So that's an easy one. And the other two are pretty easy too. But Trump hasn't even said you must get rid of priority crimes. Just make a priority crime. Why not? What's so hard about that? And then the other one is
Kill the Boer. The fourth one's kill the Boer.
Oh, yeah. All you have to do is disavow that. Why would you not disavow that? All you have to say on that is, listen, during the liberation struggle, we motivated to get our people involved to fight against the racist regime. You can even say it that way. And that was a liberation song. But that time has passed. We are already liberated. Now we're focused on building a future. So we admonish people. We ask them not to sing that song because it's divisive. And we care about Ubuntu and coming together. But they don't care about that. That's the problem. They don't care about it. These are easy wins, but they won't take it. Trump has not even said, you must get rid of your 145 race-based laws. He didn't say that. He didn't say that. He didn't say, you must give me access to cobalt. No, you don't have cobalt. You must give me access to platinum and give me access to rare earth elements. And then He never asked for any of that. The 4 points that Trump offered were very easy. But instead, the South African government, because in the words of Neil DeBeer, they're just that stupid, are never very bright. And so they're just digging a hole deeper and deeper. And who suffers? South Africans, and mostly black South Africans. That's the people who suffer more than anybody else.
But they won't learn. You see, that fourth item that we missed was kill the Boer. Now, if the president doesn't stand up against it publicly and denounce it, and the constitutional law doesn't support it, then we have a problem, because then the law is not correct and it's in contradiction with the Constitution. So it's a total mess. The legal system in this country is a total mess. That's why you have lawlessness, and that's why you will have future anarchy. Everything's collapsing. There's nothing that's working. Absolutely nothing works.
Yeah.
So that's the reality.
It's all broken. Chinua Achebe wrote this thing in West Africa, a very famous author, his book called Things Fall Apart. And he was talking about Nigeria, 50 years ago, things fall apart. Well, that's what South Africa is today. Things fall apart. Why? Because they're not maintained and people are too busy stealing. They got the Potemkin village edifice in the front. Meanwhile, out the back door, they're stealing everything and destroying and eviscerating. It's like, ripping out the insides of the body. You can't function without those internal organs. It's such a mess. And I at this point, guys, I don't know how we fix it. I mean, you can't fix it with the current government. The GNU is just the ANC light. Actually, it's ANC heavy. What has happened with GNU? The Basic Education Laws Amendment has passed, discriminating against all ethnic groups, forcing your kids to learn in English. And they want to talk about a colonial language. I knew, Rob, you and I are Anglos, so it's our colonial language, but Wynand is an Afrikaner, and, so I should think he would look at English as a colonial language. And so is the Zulu and the Xhosa, right? It's a colonial language. So Bella, that comes out. Plus they take control of your local school boards, dictating which, like now they're saying that the Great Trek was, land theft. It wasn't land theft. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's a lie. So that's going on. Then you got NHI. That's coming now. You've got the so-called black tax, in which the corporations were going to be asked. Now they're going to be demanded or forced to give 3% of their profits, after-tax profits, to black entrepreneurs. And then you've also got, of course, expropriation and compensation. All the dreams, the fantasies of the National Democratic Revolution are coming true under the government of national unity. So what is it? It's just the ANC.
Well, look, we've got the GNU, we've got the politicians, and we've got the people in all over the world, and there's a gap, and the whole world's a mess. How do you fix a global system when the countries have collapsed? It's a total farce. It's a mess. I don't see how they can bring this thing together.
The thing is, Rob, I agree with you that the global situation is not good. But Trump tries to turn this thing around. The Trump administration is doing things right. And they are not afraid to tell the British, and to tell the European Union that they are wrong to allow illegal immigrants into their country. They are wrong to ignore the Christianity where we are stemming from, etc. So he say what he wants to say. But that is what is making him a dominant person currently, the most dominant figure in the world. And perhaps the other one is Putin. But we are not talking about him tonight. The first person who really insulted South Africa was Ibrahim Rasool, who was then expelled as the ambassador of South Africa from the United States. He had an interview with Piers Morgan the other night. Your thoughts on that, Chris?
So he was roasted by Emily Schrader, who's an Israeli American. Emily has agreed to come on my program. I haven't heard from her in a couple of days. I hope she hasn't backed out, but I plan to have her on to talk about this subject. It was hilarious to see, number one, that a woman did it. I love that. Second, she did very well. She interrupted him at the end, but I mean, his response was, "I've been targeted." Dude, answer the questions. You were accused of this, this, and this. Is it not true? Then just tell us. No, he can't, because it's true. He can't deny it because we caught in a lie. No, I thought that was brilliant. The guy really does not care. He's a pro-Hamas actor, among many other things about him. He came to America and spewed racial hatred for years and called America racist and liars. And he finally got caught because somebody that was in the Zoom call share the recording. And but he's been doing that for years and getting away with it. He's not a nice person, and he's not even a net positive for the ANC. He's brought disrepute on the ANC, and he was actually, the ANC even went to the extreme step of telling people don't go to the airport. I mean, that was shocking, but that's because he's that toxic. Do you see anybody in the ANC talking about him now? No. And it's just, look, the guy is that was. I'll tell you what, I haven't laughed that hard in a while. I think I had to go check my shorts to make sure I hadn't wet them, because I was laughing my butt off watching that. It was beyond hilarious. And I mean, she was like a freaking, a Gatling gun there. She was on full automatic, man. She just nailed him point after point after point after point. And you could just see, it looked like he was constipated.
No, he was totally out of depth. He had nothing to say, just kept quiet. He wanted to say something, but he didn't have words to say.
Well, and what happened to him, Rob, is what never happens to South African politicians or many American politicians on the left. They were presented with facts and with a real conversation that they're not prepared for, because it's beyond their intellectual depth. And all they can do is just deflect. Well, I've been attacked. This is typical Islamophobia. No one mentioned your faith, Dingbat. Answer the question.
All right, coming back to the problems in South Africa, and Chris, you are one of few that know most of what's going on in the country for a few decades. Now, if you look at the greater African continent, of what's going on against the Christians, and in Sudan and Nigeria and northern Mozambique, it wasn't discussed on any platform by the G20, was it, at any stage? Did you pick it up?
No, in fact, the conflict in general like that wasn't discussed. It wasn't. Also, they didn't talk about the Rohingya in Myanmar who are being genocidal campaign against them, or the Uyghurs in China. Obviously not, because China is part of it. No discussion of those sorts of things, or for that matter, the war crimes committed by the Ethiopian Defense Forces against Tigrayans, executing conscripts, shooting them in the back of the head, and dumping them into ravines. We have the video evidence of that. No mention of that. Nothing about what's going on in Sudan, where millions of people have been displaced. No, I mean, they talk a good game, but they don't even talk a good game. This is not a priority for them. To be fair, though, in my view, that's not what the G20 should be talking about. All they should be talking about is reduced tariffs and reduced barriers to trade, and ways to encourage trade, facilitate financing, and and that sort of thing, and reducing government control of economies. That's what the G20 should be doing.
But because all they are talking about is climate change, wokeness, and all that stuff that is actually irrelevant to us in a very large way, that we don't want to hear about. I've read something today that the Chinese has taken over the HIV subsidy. The United States used to pay a huge amount for HIV, and I think the Chinese is now offered HIV support of about $3.5 million. By the way, a country should be able to fix its own medical problems and not depend on external countries. But what I see here is as if the ANC is deliberately antagonizing the United States and move over to the Chinese more and more. Take the HIV as example. Then all those factories that is closed in Uitenhage because of the tariffs, those car manufacturers, those facilities have already been taken over by the Chinese motor manufacturing companies. Is it, to your thought, and Rob, you can also come in there, is it a deliberate effort, or is it plain stupidity?
Well, I think it's plain stupidity. I mean, you want to replace $355 million in aid for HIV with $1.75 million in a single year? I mean, because that's what it is. I think I mentioned that earlier. This announcement by China and they're getting all this press. Oh, look at, they're helping South Africa. $1.75 million a year for 2 years. That's it. The U.S. is giving over $350 million per year. So it's stupidity. I mean, it's also empty window dressing. So they can say, look, the Chinese are doing this. but the practical impact is on the ground. There's no one doing surveillance and monitoring. Excuse me.
But Chris, don't you see or feel and experience that the African continent is moving more to the east side? China, the BRICS, like they don't want anything to do with Europe and with the West.
That's not been my experience in Africa. My experience in Africa has been that it's a mixed bag, but generally speaking, it tends to shift more to the West. But the problem is that political leaders use rhetoric to wring concessions out of Europeans and out of the Americans. They've been getting away with it. They're very clever. They know how, if mommy won't give it to you, go to daddy, that sort of thing. And so a lot of rhetoric, you hear a lot of anti-American, a lot of anti-colonialism. But look what just happened in Angola. In Angola, they just had the European Union Africa Summit on the heels of this. And the Europeans, Ursula I like to call her von der Leyen, she's lying, and Lugna, but her name is Leyen. Ursula von der Leyen, she's up there, and the Europeans are promising to do all these things. And suddenly the press in South Africa and across Africa talking great and wondrous things about the people that just minutes ago they were calling evil colonizers, evil racists who colonized and subjugated Africa, and they're still interfering in our affairs. But now suddenly it's all fine because they've promised money, but the money's not coming. So take a deep breath here. I really think that that they just want the money. And they use that rhetoric because it resonates with segments of Africa's population, whether it's in the Maghreb and it's Arabs, or it's in the tropics and it's Black Africans. It's something that works with a certain constituency, and it shouldn't. But the problem is that education is abysmal across the continent. People don't really know what's going on in the world. I mean, a video that someone just published yesterday, I just eviscerated in a matter of a couple minutes by checking 3 sources and confirming what I already knew, but getting 3 independent sources. And I put a video up and just destroyed it. But people believe, in fact, people who are worried about becoming refugees coming to America are freaking out because this video this woman did. And I said, okay, first off, why do you presume it's true? Think for yourself. But people don't think for themselves, and that's a major problem. By the way, there's a super chat here from Mark Myberg. If you give me a chance, but I forget, I'd like to address it because he gave you some money.
Yeah, no, Mark is also on here with us now. He's talking with, he also gave me a super check. Yeah, here it is. I'm right with it.
That's the one.
Mark is actually a staunch supporter of the channel. We have reached about 1,100 viewers who is watching at the same time. And yeah, that is great. Hi, Chris. Mark is asking. Hi, Chris. What is your view with regards to Simonstown's importance?
All right. Yep. So I'll be happy to answer that from my perspective. But first, I need to say clouds are gathering. Super chats. Clouds are gathering. So in answer to Mark's question, and yeah, Mark and Patri used to be big supporters of my channel, but I somehow lost them. I must have said something bad about the Stormers, but that seems implausible. No, but seriously, because I'm a Stormers fan. But seriously, so my view on this is different than folks, and I think a little different than Wynand, but I think in principle we agree. So to me, and just bear with me a second. Generally speaking, geopolitically, I would say that Simonstown has no value whatsoever, unless someone else gets it. Okay. If the Chinese get a foothold in there, if the Russians get a foothold, then it becomes geostrategically important to the United States. But if that's not the case, we don't need it as an operating base. And if we had it, it's not large enough as a base. I don't know if it can be expanded. I don't know the depths of False Bay. I'd have to do, a nautical survey to be more informed than that. And maybe these guys are, but I'm not. But unless someone else gets it, it's not of major value to us. But if it were expanded and it had more space, we get some more subs in there, some larger ships. If we get a carrier in there, and if we had long-term leasing, then it would be geostrategically important to the U.S. But short of that, we can accomplish what we need to accomplish without it. It would simplify things and save us a lot of money and give us much broader and easier reaction time around the Horn of Africa and up the east and west coast for a great distance. So it would be valuable from that standpoint, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. Certainly not with the government you've got now. So unless the Chinese get a foothold in there, it really doesn't matter. And that's why I tell people it is important. People think it's a big selling point. I'm saying it's not a big selling point. But if the Chinese start getting their figures, and I'll give you a good example. So the United States built the Panama Canal. And we lost 30,000 plus American lives to dengue fever, to malaria, to dysentery, to everything. They died in droves down there, American workers building that canal. And it was U.S. soil because they sold it to us. It was our soil, but it split Panama, bifurcated the country. So Carter gave it back. Well, the Chinese were negotiating to take control of the operations of the Panama Canal. Trump found out. He's like, whoa, no. Now that's a problem. That's a problem. So Trump threatened to put tariffs on them, and the Chinese were out of it. So it's not an issue for us anymore. But if the Chinese got a hold of it, that would have been a problem, because they, like they do with rare earth elements, they could have played bully and said, we're going to shut down the canal. So that's how these things become important. And I think South Africa, if the Chinese get a foothold, becomes important. Other than that, I don't think it's of that big importance.
Chris, yeah, I agree to an extent with you. I did at university, I did a piece on the strategic importance of the Cape Sea route. In those years, it was very important, but then it was under our control, who was pro-Western at that stage. And it's not rumors anymore that China is working at the bridge with the aim to get access to Simonstown to repair all the broken ships. With disregard to the people who has maintained the present systems aboard those ships, the Chinese can just replace the ships. They will probably not even bother to repair the ones that is there, just replace it. But eventually, if we look at the fact that the United States got a base in Botswana, now getting on your turf, the British got bases in Lesotho, and the Chinese now are starting to fiddling in Cape Town, in Simonstown. Then we got a complete situation, a threat situation for the control of Southern Africa or South Africa. And that's what a lot of intelligence guys have said in the past, is South Africa will maybe experience a hot war in South Africa because of this situation. You said yourself, if the Chinese get a foothold, it might become a problem.
Yeah, and along those lines, a piece that we haven't talked about here that actually is germane to this topic is that so the Chinese Navy doesn't have global projection capabilities. That's why they need these bases. We have the ability to project our power anywhere around the globe at any time. Our Navy, our Space Force, our land forces, we can go anywhere at any time on short notice and have an impact. Just ask Tehran about that. So we can do this anywhere, and we can do it. They're flying over the Pacific. No, they're not. They're going the other way. In fact, when that happened, I said, that doesn't make any sense. Why would we tell people we're flying stealth fighters over the Pacific? Is it a show of force? I'll bet something else is going on. As everybody looked the other direction, and sure enough, we were bombing Iran a number of hours later. But we can project, the Chinese cannot. And I don't believe, analyzing their military, that they'll have the projection capability they desire for another 20 years, although they're working towards it. This would jumpstart that. They already have a naval base in Djibouti. Of course, the French have an air base there, or a ground base. The Americans have an air base there and a ground base. The Japanese have an air base there. And now the Chinese have a naval base in Djibouti. And so having that lily pad has given them much further reach to get across the Indian Ocean. And having Cape Town, Simonstown, or Durban would be huge for them, and having access to that. But you're right. They're not going to repair any ships. They'll just junk the German ships that were bought for billions of dollars and replace it with cheap Chinese stuff that I could sink with a rocket launcher. So it's not a good situation, and China is not your friend. It's nobody's friend, not even the Chinese. Certainly not their own friend.
Yeah, but Chris, the point is, the South African ANC controlled government of national unity. Let me put it that way. It seems that they are hellbound on going against the wishes of the West and leaning over to the other side. Well, we know that's a traditional thing in Africa, but it's a worrying factor for me, the Israel situation, the International Court of Justice. Israel and United States got very close ties and relationships. And Israel used to be a very good partner for the old government, previous government with us during the time of the border war, especially. We've sent a lot of special forces over there to do certain trainings and stuff. So that is when you look from the military side, there were very close relationships. Closer than with any other country in the world. Perhaps France had also a big influence, but that was on the diving part of the special forces, the equipment-wise, etc. Now, with the government antagonizing the government in Israel, antagonizing the government in the USA, who is predominantly the two sides on the western sides that is trying to make an impact, to keep their footprint, and to be there. And South Africa is now in opposition to both of them. Don't you think that things are going to escalate in South Africa because of this current situation that exists, because of the government's foolhardiness to keep on a track that they can't maintain, but they refuse to sort of admit defeat against the United States or who else.
Yeah. Wynand, Chris, I want to come in here. I want to use Sudan as a point of departure as to how I see South Africa could roll out. Now, in Sudan, the northern part of Sudan gets support from Egypt. And the southern part of Sudan is supported by the UAE. And they've all got their minerals, their gold, and other similar minerals that goes back to Russia. So Russia's got a two-prong approach. They're working through Egypt, and they also work through the UAE to get the gold in Sudan. So you have the Sudanese army, the SAF on the northern side, and you've got the rapid support forces in the south. And that could be your future EFF MK guys fighting over minerals. So you can easily see a copy-paste taking place in Sudan here. And the question is, where's the AU, African Union, in this? And where's the EU and where's United Nations in all of this? So Africa remains volatile, unstable, so that the people infiltrate whatever way they do it with the many faces and many avenues to take it the minerals. Then coming to South Africa, South Africa's got lots of minerals as well, oil and gold, etc., etc. So Russia, China wants it. The West, Europe wants it. So that's why I say, coming back to the harbors, they will become key points in the near future.
Well, it's certainly a possibility, but you have to have functioning ports. And South Africa's ports are ranked 78th in the world, the worst performing ports among countries that have ports. It's abysmal what's going on. So it's a fair point. Earlier, Wynand was talking about support during the previous epoch, the previous time, and I know he knows very well that France supplied the Daphne class submarines to South Africa. Because I know that purportedly he actually traveled in one of those to Angola once upon a time. I can neither confirm nor deny that, but that's the rumor.
Quite a couple of times, Chris. Quite a couple of times.
I can't confirm or deny that, but I've heard that's a story that you were in there.
You must just remember one thing. The whole Daphne submarine will fit into the gymnasium of one of your super submarines.
Probably. But they were effective for their time. They did it. They did what you needed.
They did their job, yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the Type 209 submarines you have now have been neglected and they're rotting. There's nothing happening with them. They're really good diesel submarines, but they've wasted them. It's a shame.
I just saw a year Billy B. He got a submarine for his
Avatar.
the photo, which tells me something. It tells me that Billy was was a submariner during days gone by, maybe even today, I don't know. But the point is that we used to have a great force. And even with the little and small and almost backward equipment, we did an excellent job.
Yeah.
But we are not talking about that tonight. My worry is that ANC attitude are going to drive us into bigger problems that we currently have. And if we look at what the Trump administration is doing in other countries, we can expect that there will be more and more pressure being put on South Africa to get rid of the Chinese influence on the one hand and to re-establish their control over South Africa. And we must remember there's few people that is controlling the world. And Donald Trump is breaking up those control because he's going against the grain of what everybody, all other leaders are doing. So I think the support of South Africa will become more of not the support, access to South Africa will become more and more important in 2026.
No, I think that's a fair statement. I don't disagree with that at all, particularly in the search for rare earths in the Karoo. There are purportedly deposits of rare earths, and there's already some effort to mine them there. That's a huge issue that needs to be addressed. And I think that American companies in particular are going to be looking for those, trying to get in there and get some rare earth elements to mine them and potentially process them. That's definitely important. The thing with all this stuff is that it's only going to take one domino to change the pressure in South Africa. So Macron is hanging on by a thread in France. He's unbelievably unpopular when his wife isn't bitch slapping him. I mean hitting him. It's other things going on there. He's barely holding on to governance there. And if the ruling coalition in Germany goes sideways, which is possible, but less likely in France, if one of those dominoes falls, then we're going to see a lot more Viktor Orbáns across Europe, people who support Trump and support this effort. Right now, the only real support that Trump seems to have that's public, he has private support from these leaders, but publicly, the only ones come out and say the things that Trump is going to say is Viktor Orbán in Hungary, who's kind of a pariah at the EU. They just don't like him because he closed his borders like he should have done. And Donald Tusk in Poland was sort of an advocate, but he's kind of, because of the Ukraine situation, shifted more in the other direction. But I think one of those dominoes, and then suddenly, if you had France, and then another country comes, it's if one goes to the center right, and openly speaks up, then others will start following and join Trump, and then the pressure on South Africa will become immense, and South Africa will die without the United States and Europe. It's simple. The Chinese cannot make up for that. They can't. And so you have to have Europe and the U.S. for trade. You've lost the U.S. The 30 after what we saw last night. That 30% tariff isn't going anywhere. There's no trade negotiator in America from South Africa. There's no ambassador here. There hasn't been for months. They keep lying and saying they're negotiating with our Jameson Greer with our trade. It's not happening. This is a fairy tale. You've already lost. So you got 30% already, according to the South African government, just a month ago. The tariffs didn't take effect till the 9th of August, I think it was. It's when they finally went to effect. A month ago in October. So 2 months, already 40,000 jobs were lost in South Africa because of U.S. tariffs in just 2 months. And now it's not going to get better. So if you get in a situation where a couple of leaders in Europe start turning against South Africa, it's going to go that way very south. And they can't sustain it. They can't pay the SASA grants. There's no money for it. And it's all going to go sideways. And trust me, Mr. Big Mac is not going to take any of his fortune and pay off that stuff. That ain't going to happen.
Wynand, Chris, let's quickly talk about genocide. That was also again discussed on the media the past week and two. You had the EFF Malema saying that AfriForum and solidarity are white terrorists. This rhetoric continues. And of course, you've got the media. I think it was Ronald Lamola saying that there's no white genocide taking place in the country, and that few YouTubes that I sent you that from that lady in Sunnyside saying there's no genocide taking place in South Africa. We need to put some form of program together to educate, and I'm going to use the word again, educate our people about what is really genocide. There's different stages, different levels of genocide. There's senior organizations that haven't gripped it yet. They don't understand what it is. There is genocide taking place in this country. And Donald Trump and his administration is correct. It is. Killabur is also a heavy force to promote genocide. So what can be done so that our people are educated on genocide? There is genocide taking place. And why don't they get it that it is not happening? Why are they saying it's not happening? What can be done? What educational program can be done to educate them that there is genocide in SA?
Because the 44 representatives of the Afrikaner make their voices heard.
Well,
Yes.
I think those 44 you're talking about are all friends of Charlize Theron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, those was the guys who have refused military service in the old days, who was anti-everything. And very soon after 1994, all those misfits became the opinion creators.
Mhm.
They were employed by the newspapers and everything, and from there on, they was basically running the opinion. But in the old times, they weren't there. They didn't fit the scenario. Okay, but let's leave it there. You can
No,
answer.
that's all right. I mean, I'm happy to talk about the 44 Ferrayas. I'm happy to talk about them. That's what they are, Ferrayas. Yeah, they're shameful people, and they're also liars. Yeah, on the genocide issue. So, I mean, I got to use some nuance here. Okay, so let me explain. So, Trump, I keep telling people that Trump has not said that. Trump has responded to questions from reporters, called on a tarmac, called at a press conference. They use the term genocide, and he responds to it. I had not seen instances of Trump calling out genocide until he used the word extermination when he said we're not going to come to the G20 summit. We won't send a delegation because they're exterminating people. That's the first time I heard him say that. But that too was in response to a question from a reporter. However, last night, Trump yesterday afternoon put out a Truth Social post, which we talked about earlier, and he says genocide. Now, no prompting from anybody. He clearly says genocide there. So when it comes to genocide, I have been saying for years that there is a cultural genocide taking place in South Africa, an intentional effort to stamp out Afrikaans language and Afrikaans culture, and an intentional effort to target white Afrikaans speakers in South Africa with the destruction of their heritage, with this ludicrous renaming campaign, with the most shocking of all developments, the elimination of Afrikaans as medium of instruction at Stellenbosch. You know, it's insane. And so the Anglicization that's going on, there is a clear cultural genocide to wipe out. In a perfect world, the people that are doing this in 100 years, nobody would speak Afrikaans in South Africa. There'd be no trace of the cultural history of Afrikaners. That is a goal. That is genocidal, culturally.
Correct.
Now, as far as wiping out Afrikaners as a people, I don't see that as plausible for the following reasons. First off, there's a diaspora. There are a large number of Afrikaners living in Australia, New Zealand, and in England, although many of them lose their culture, so it is problematic, and Canada and elsewhere. But even with this refugee program, if tens or hundreds of thousands of people leave South Africa, there will always be Afrikaners in South Africa, inside Africa. It is their home. It is who they are. It is in their blood. The soil is in their feet. They will always be there. The question is, how will they be able to survive, and will they be productive? Will they be allowed to flourish? And that's the real question Afrikaners face today. So when it comes to genocide, I can't unequivocally say there's an effort to wipe out the Afrikaners as a folk, but there's definitely an effort to destroy their culture, which is a form of genocide, and I stand by that. If Trump may have more information. Now, the reason I say that is because, look, we get this nonsense the government isn't doing. It doesn't have to be the government. It wasn't the government that ran around and killed all the Jews in pogroms in Belarus and in Russia in the 19th century. It was people. It was, it was like Operation Dudula, those xenophobes. It was people like that. They get together and they attack people. And so, you don't need the government to be, the public can be complicit by sitting back and not taking action, which I think is a fair argument. The government is not taking action to prevent or to lower the temperature. Therefore, Trump may be making the argument they're complicit in this. And that's a fair argument to make. But again, I come back to Afrikaners will survive. The problem is that what is happening is reprehensible, and the safety and the pleas of the Afrikaner people being ignored by a government that clearly doesn't care about them and clearly seems to hate them, including the GNU, many people in the GNU.
Yeah,
No, I concur with you, Chris. I agree.
Yeah. Rob, you or me?
No, you, sir.
Okay. Yeah. No, I forgot now what I wanted to ask because you. Yeah. But Chris, if we look at all the stuff that is happening over the past year, and it's accelerating at this point. If we look at the situation in South Africa, and we now realize that it cannot be turned around anymore. The ANC is not going to accept any election results. What is going to happen here?
Wow, that's a big one. That's a tough one to predict.
Just remember, when we started talking a couple of years ago, the situation wasn't even close to where we are today. Not even close. But we are moving to the point of a total collapse, and you know what the message is capable of.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't have to look very far. We've seen a dress rehearsal. We've watched this movie before. I predicted on June 29th, 2021, when Zuma was found in contempt of court and sentenced to the escort prison. Not initially, he was supposed to go somewhere else, but they put him. I predicted there'd be chaos in KZN, but my prediction was it would be in Nkandla, where it would start and spiral from there. But it didn't start in Nkandla. It started at the Mooi River Travel Tollgate Plaza. On the N4, I think it is, down there in KZN. And that's where it started. They torched 100 trucks that night, and it all unfolded from there. And we saw publicly admitted 354 deaths, but we are pretty confident over 3,000 people were murdered or killed during that insurrection. And that's what it was. It was an insurrection. It was an internal African National Congress insurrection against itself. This was part of the party turning against itself. And the criminal intelligence didn't work. The military intelligence didn't work. The state security and the police were unprepared, unequipped. No one prepared for this. And here I am on June 29th, sitting 6,000 miles away saying, okay, do you have rehearsals? Are water cannons in place in KZN? And are you ready for this? Have you gone over this? Do you have fuel? Do you have vehicles? Do you have bullets? Do you have zip ties and restraints and ways to transport prisoners? And completely ignored. And of course, I'm not a South African official, so they ignore me. And then what happens? It all starts blowing up on July 8th. It just went up like a balloon. We've seen this before, and your point is right. What happens? Well, I think the ANC youth are going to eat the ANC if we get to that stage. I think that's where it'll come from, the youth, 90% of whom are unemployed, and they've got a lot of time in their hands. That's a dangerous cocktail. Unemployed people, unhappy, who are poor, and it's even worse today. In 1976 in Soweto and in Sharpeville, 1960, there were no cell phones. You couldn't coordinate and get people to move from here to there. People didn't have the resource to get people around. Today, this is explosive, and I think it's a problem. The whole thing can just implode on itself. If that happens, you could very well see people like the United States flying C-17s in to evacuate people. I mean, if we get to that stage. But I agree with you that this has been accelerating, and it's been accelerating for one reason. The ANC. They're the ones that have precipitated this. There's no need for this. South Africa could have negotiated a fair trade deal. They could have, let me pretend that I'm an ANC negotiator for just a minute, okay? All right, Mr. President, while we have issues with your 4 points, we agree that our relationship is important enough that we'll consider changing this. But first off, we're going to disavow Kill the Boer. You'll see an announcement coming out this week. After that, we're going to accelerate and have the Constitutional Court take a look at our law to see if, in fact, it's constitutional. Of course, knowing it's not. We'll do that. And then we're going to do the following things. Now, You want to put 30% tariffs on us. That's difficult. We have a struggling economy. We rely heavily on the U.S. marketplace for our auto exports, for our wine industry, for agriculture. Is there a way we can work this down? What we'll do is we will remove the barriers that prevent your pork products coming into our market. Our pork industry is not that big. You can send your pork in here. And then we will look at changing the quotas on your auto industry. And we would like to get this down to the base rate of 10% or better. Can we do that? That's what I would have done. That's what I would have done. And then if you're smart, you stroke Trump's ego. Trump likes to talk about people succeeding, and you can tell him about success stories. That's what they should have done. But they're too arrogant or stupid to do that. And they are the ones. Well, I mean, but you don't have to be educated to be smart, Rob. You you got people that don't have lots of degrees.
If politicians were, or if veterans were politicians, you wouldn't have this nonsense. I mean, we'd be able to negotiate and keep peace. I don't know. That's one of the things I feel that military veterans should get more into politics, and you wouldn't have this nonsense. Like what you just said now. You solved the problem. And now going forward, the trade deals are going to get worse. Trump's going to tighten the rope more on South Africa. They're going to keep blaming the minority groups or blame AfriForum and Solidarity for going over to the White House. The pressure is just going to increase. And even with the exclusion of South Africa in the G20 for 2026, it's going to mount. It's going to carry on. It's going to just get worse.
I want to come in here quickly. We are busy now for 1 hour and 16 minutes. Still 1,070 people that is logged onto the chat at the moment. Chris, you are aware of the landing of the Palestinians here from Gaza. You are aware of Suleiman's declaration that he's not listening. He only is bound by the law of Islam and nothing more. We have seen the South African Defense Force, the head of the Defense Force, visiting Iran. And there's more and more voices that is going up, especially since yesterday, about the threat of an Islamic takeover of South Africa. And this is a very concerning factor because they have been ignored for years by the government. They have not been controlled. We know there is many trained operatives in South Africa. And I want your take on Iran and the Islamic threat in South Africa, seeing that Iran is basically sponsoring a lot of external groups. They might even participate in a possible takeover of the government. Your thoughts on that?
Okay, so I can add something else to that, not just the things you just mentioned, but in addition to that, as Foreign Minister Lady Pandor made a congratulatory phone call to Hamas after they murdered 1,200 people on October 7th of 2023. And then she made a trip to Tehran and then came back, and suddenly the ANC, which had no money, was in bankruptcy, and the sheriff of the high court had went and inventoried the items to sell at public auction. They suddenly were able, they claimed to pay off the $102 million debt plus the $50 million in interest and penalties that the court assessed for their debt from 2019. Of course, subsequently found out that that wasn't the case. They'd only paid a portion of that debt. But in addition to that, they paid 20 million rand for the big birthday celebration at Nelspruit. And then they ran an election campaign. If you look at the campaign contributions come from the Bato Trust and from the Chancellor House and from rich South Africans, it doesn't come anywhere near to mention that. So there's something going on there. So I would throw in Lady Pandor and the relations with Tehran in there as well. So my thoughts about this, about the Islamization of South Africa's domestic and foreign policy, I would say that that is a genuine concern for people because of the tendency of the ANC to glom onto terror states and fascist dictators and people who have no regard for the rule of law. It's quite disturbing. and it's something that it really needs more attention. Now, this is not Islamophobia. I don't fear Islam. I lived in Muslim countries. I have no problem with Muslims, but I have a problem with radical Islamic nonsense, which is what we're talking about here. And there is a real serious concern, which you allude to, Van, and that is that there's a community in the Western Cape, which, by the way, is where Islam was introduced in South Africa. When folks were brought over from Indonesia and Malaya who were Muslims, they were introduced and they became part of the Cape colored community. And some of them speak Kapsa and Afrikaans, of course. And that is a community that's been long neglected, and its rights were impinged upon from their point of view for a long time. And they were neglected by the ANC. But there's the elevation of certain people in the ANC to high levels position, like Pandor and others who are Muslims. And by the way, she's a Muslim convert. She wasn't raised as Muslim, if I recall correctly, who gained ascendancy in the party. It's a very serious concern to worry about because South Africa is aligning itself with terror states and with states that are out of order. But look, I mean, South Africa is doing all kinds of things that are in violation of national norms. They like to throw stones and say the United States is being undiplomatic or it's violating national norms. No, it isn't the United States. It isn't the United States that sent helicopters to a sanctioned warlord in Libya. That was South Africa's government that didn't stop that from happening. And that wasn't the first time it's happened. It's also South Africa. So that's a violation of United Nations sanctions. South Africa should be under threat of sanction from the UN Security Council for allowing that to happen and not interdicting it more than once. And I got to tell you, I'm impressed that the South African press actually covered that story. I was shocked they covered it. But this Islamization issue and the behavior of South Africa, it's making the country a rogue state. It is a rogue actor, and Trump is going to increasingly come to see them that way. And others like Japan and South Korea will also begin to see South Africa in that light, given what's going on here. South Africa runs a very real risk of finding itself isolated. This bold, boastful talk. That, by the way, you mentioned earlier you showed the video from ENCA. That video came out like literally seconds after Trump put his tweet out. He put it out there. That's because it was already prepared in advance because they knew it was coming. They suspected it was going to come. So they had all this propaganda ready to go. We already see people running on Cockprot 24 saying, well, he can't kick him out. Yeah, well, okay. You didn't do the analysis overnight. You did the analysis ahead of time and you were ready for it. So yeah, the Islamization thing, I think, is a very serious concern for South Africa's foreign policy. And it's bizarre. It's a Christian nation, overwhelmingly a Christian nation.
But that will be my last big question, is this will now focus the attention of both Israel and the United States on South Africa more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. That's I mean, and that's why I made that video, which I think you saw, Van. I think I sent it to you. It's like, what does Trump know that we don't know? I mean, I'm not in the intelligence community anymore, and I don't deal with them. I was training them for a while, but I'm not doing that consulting anymore. But I don't have access to the information, and I know what we're capable of gathering. I know we're capable of analyzing because I've been involved in that, and I know what we can figure out. So I'm beginning to suspect that there's a lot more crossing his desk than most people realize. And it's like you said, 2026 is shaping up to be a very bad year for South Africa unless something dramatic happens.
I agree with that. Yeah, Johnny Broncos that is asking us here. He said, "We will come and support the minority people in South Africa." No one, Johnny, no one. But there is an alternative, which is starting to show its head. If South Africa goes into a conflict, whether it's about the Cape Sea route, or even whether it's against Islam take over in the country, we might receive support, but not in the form of equipment and that type of stuff, or physical help and that type of stuff. Instead, I see that there might be aid in the form of help yourself. This is a problem that we will have to resolve here in South Africa as Christians and nowhere else.
Well, then,
gentlemen,
can I jump in here real quick, Rob? Oh, thanks.
Go ahead.
So yeah, thank you. So when I first started broadcasting after retirement from active duty, and I was stuck in lockdown scam like everybody else was, I couldn't travel. when I first started broadcasting, a lot of South Africans came to my channel and they're like, is because Trump had that tweet. Remember, he had that tweet about a farm murder that one time he did after Tucker Carlson talked to Ansel Roots. And is Trump going to save us? And I said, guys, nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's coming to save you in South Africa. You have to save yourself. You have to be prepared for the apocalypse. And you have to, I'm not telling you to be a prepper, but you have to be prepared. That's why folks to do what the Sightline Civil Defense do is important. You need to be prepared for if things go sideways and the balloon goes up. Now, having said that, South Africa has antagonized Trump to such a degree that I can envision a possibility that maybe something different might happen with this administration if the balloon goes up in the next 3 years. I think that's a genuine possibility. That's not a promise. I don't have insight with the government, but Trump he has been so reserved, but he's also been very busy with Gaza and with Ukraine and with the Democrats and tariffs and everything under the sun. I mean, they tried to kill him last year. The guy's been busy, but now, unfortunately, that he's on the radar. South Africa's on the radar screen for Trump. It's front and center. Now he's done pussyfooting around. And so, if the South African government threatens people, who knows? Look, we're in Somalia. We're in Puntland tonight. Who predicted that? I didn't predict us going into Puntland. Somalia, yes, but not Puntland. And maybe Venezuela. So you never know. And I saw the comment from Etienne. Thank you for that, Etienne. I think a lot of people tuning in tonight aren't familiar with me or don't know my knowledge of South Africa. So I'm glad they got a chance to hear what I had to say tonight. And by the way, come check out my channel. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, guys, you can of course join Chris's channels as well, and he's making a lot of videos that is going out. Rob, I'm seeing you are bursting with energy to ask a question or make a statement.
Now, the reality is we always look at history and we look at what goes on before to make a calculated decision. Look what's going on in Nigeria, the genocide taking place in Nigeria. There's no international engagement at all. I mean, there's nothing. It's too big, it's too vast, it's too dangerous. Let's go to Sudan, same thing. So to answer everybody's question, will there be any international support in South Africa when anarchy breaks out and when everything collapses? We all know everything's collapsing. We need to be realistic. We're all builders, we are optimistic, but we are problem solvers. And we can see the future, we can see what's going on. I can guarantee you our situation is going to be the same as Nigeria and the same as Sudan, and that's your answer. Go YouTube it, go and see what goes on. The international platform have got two other many issues, and they're all stretched as it is. I mean, we know Europe doesn't have armed forces ready to take on Russia, and similar. So we're on our own. Get yourself sorted and get ready, because the times ahead are not good. I mean, Chris knows it. Chris, you can also close on that. You can see what's going to happen. There's no solution for the country. The political leaders are not, I'm going to say this word, they're not educated. Not one of them are educated to solve this country's problems.
Rob, yeah, I would say there are solutions, but the problem is it requires excising people from government that are sitting in seats right now and amending South Africa's political system. That's the only way. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. And that's the problem. Yeah, again, that's what I've been telling people for years. No one's coming to your rescue, but I do think that under the current circumstances, it's an open-ended question now. Before it wasn't even a question. No one. But Trump is showing he's willing to intervene. And I don't know if he would intervene in South Africa, but the point is, it is messy. You're right. And people really don't see what's going on in the world. But the Europeans, you're very right about that. Not only can they not defend Russia, but the Europeans don't have the capacity to even intervene in Africa. They don't have the capacity. Only a few countries have the lift capability to fly that far and get troops there. And they're not in that. I mean, they went to Afghanistan, but they went to Afghanistan because the U.S. put the infrastructure in, and they all glommed in on the U.S. infrastructure in NATO. If the U.S. isn't doing something, they tried this. They went to the Congo when I worked Defense Intelligence Agency, and they had a German-French force that went there, and they didn't do anything. They sat in the barracks. So I don't think the Europeans are capable of intervening, and they also don't have a stomach for it. I mean, Keir Starmer, spare me. That ain't going to happen. Emmanuel Macron, I mean, God, that guy, he's probably wearing leotards right now for all I know. Anyway, yeah, but thank you, everybody. Thank you both for inviting me onto Bosberaad. It's been a distinct pleasure to be back with you all again here. And Wynand, you had mentioned to me a few weeks back, but I was so buried with the election and with my consulting and with all the stuff going on about getting back on Fireside with the Colonels. Maybe we do that coming up in a week or two, if you like. We'll get you back on my channel. We'll talk these issues again. And I want to thank both of you. It's a real pleasure to come on the program and a chance to talk about these things. And for those who discovered who I am tonight, where have you been hiding? Under a rock? I'm not to boast or anything. I'm kind of well known in South Africa. I mean, I can't do anything wrong because somebody will drop dimes and report me. I saw the Colonel. He was in Hillside. What was he doing there? Anyway, no. So, but I'm glad that you've discovered who I am. Go check out my channel at Colonel Chris Wyatt on YouTube. Thank you. Bye, donkey, gentlemen.
Yeah, Chris, I want to thank you both, you and Rob, for your participation tonight. And I agree, we will do the fireside with the Colonels again very soon. I'm receiving a bit of a visit by my elder children from tomorrow. But as soon as that is behind me, then we will arrange definitely something that we can chat, and I will advertise it everywhere where I can. And we can have a nice chat. But thanks a lot for your insight, Chris. Say goodbye to the people, and then I'm going to take you two off and do the exit.
All right.
And you as well.
Yeah, Chris, just one last thing from my side. I'm looking forward to seeing you again in South Africa. Be nice to see you again.
Yeah, if I'm not escorted out of the country by state security agents on arrival. I'm not getting very popular, but I mean, look, I'm just telling the truth. I'm actually offering counsel to the ANC. Don't do this. It's not in your interest. Anyway, but seriously, so thank you both very much. I appreciate it. And to the audience, Toit scenes, and see you next time.
Cheers, Chris. Thank you, Wynand. To the viewers, good night, and we'll talk going forward. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. And that's it, guys. And ladies, we are at the end of tonight's broadcast. We have been live for 1 hour and 31 minutes, and we had combined same time viewers of over 1,100. And to all the super chats that came in tonight, I am grateful, saying thank you to all of you and your support. And you guys must stay well. And I see you again next week, but the week after that, I won't be there. Okay, guys, have a nice evening. Stay well, stay safe, and we talk again in my normal broadcast tomorrow morning will be there. Stay well.
When some saw it was a birdboskei, om daar hoog in die blauwe lucht te kan draai en draai, of van bo uit die wolke af te kyk. Hoe die sandveld ver daaronder aan die Weskus lyk. Vlekke wyd, koers of wat, oor die veld, oor die pad, verlore vlug, vry en bly, die bos kraai, oor die Weskus bly. Vlekke wyd, koers of wat, oor die veld, oor die pad, verlore vlug, vry en bly, die bos kraai, oor die Weskus bly. Om vlekte spanning koers te kry, oor taai beskaal en Elandsbaai verloor vlei. Nou dit weer te glip oor Wolfhuis, Postduifklip en aan die ander kant van Doornbaai, met die Sessions-spoor noordoost te draai. Vlekke wyd, koers nog wat, oor die veld, oor die pad, verlore vlug, vry en bly, die bos kraai, oor die Weskus bly. Vlekke wyd, koers gevat, oor die veld, oor die pad, verlore vlug, Weskus bly. Om vlekke wyd, koers na pad, oor die veld, oor die pad, verlore vlug, vry en bly, die bos kraai, oor die Weskus bly.